Hello everyone, I am Jericho Spitz. You are now live on the THC Show. If you don't know how to get there, then you go to the thcshow.com and you'll find me along with the rest of the conscious people in our group that like to share, spread, read, and receive knowledge pertaining to consciousness and things of the like. I didn't get to do a show this Monday, but I am going to be getting back on track with regular shows on Monday as often as I possibly can. But it's Thursday now, and I'm just getting a chance to really catch up and knock this out. I wanted to get out of the house and do it, and kind of give you guys an idea of what's going on down in Orlando. At least, as you can see, I'm downtown at Lake Eola, and while in the summer, and I mean not in the summer, but like pretty much any time when it's not COVID, alert season and shit, there's usually like a lot more people at this park. But at the same time, people are out, as you can see, and there's even groups of people are walking around. I just walked around the whole park twice, and as you can see, this is a big park walking around this whole Lake Eola. It's kind of like a track downtown here that everybody walks around for exercise. You can't really bike and skate around it, but not on the track. But it's a nice little area to get out at, and just get some fresh air, get some exercise. Beautiful scenery, a lot of ducks and wildlife everywhere. It's a protected area, no boats and all that kind of stuff, but they do have like the little swan boats like they have up at Lincoln Park Zoo in Chicago. But anyway, just wanted to kind of give you guys an idea of what's happening around Orlando, at least. I don't know what's going on with everybody out there and the different places you guys are living at, and how the shutdown is affecting all of y'all, but I know that it's not really put a damper on life here. For the most part, people can travel. I mean, the cops aren't stopping people for traveling. If you don't got a mask on, it's like whatever. Like, everybody's living their life. I mean, a lot of people, the people who are scared and staying in, there's a lot of people that are scared of staying in, but there's also a lot of people that are out, that are acting normal, living their normal life like nothing's going on. And that's kind of like, I guess, what I'm going to be doing until I see reason to do otherwise. I've been posting a whole lot of videos from a whole lot of different people, different doctors and different people who are critical thinkers and have been analyzing the stats and the data and the numbers coming out of the media and coming out of Washington and coming out of the World Health Organization and the CDC and the American Medical Association, and we're just not agreeing with the conclusions that they're drawing. We're first of all not agreeing with the numbers. They're jacking the numbers up and attributing deaths that have nothing to do with COVID, and they're attributing those deaths to COVID. So people are dying. Even a baby in Oklahoma died. The mom came in the hospital, tested positive for COVID, or they said she tested positive for COVID. She was so stressed out and got so scared, she ended up having the baby premature, and the baby died. They listed the baby as a COVID death. I'm just saying, this is one of the many, 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 many deaths that is not COVID related that they are attributing to this coronavirus. Now, I'm not a doctor. I'm not an accredited scientist. But I do read and I do study and I do research, and I don't just watch YouTube videos. I actually read. I read, peer-reviewed journals. I read a lot of, scientific stuff that a lot of people might not take the time out to read because it's just a little too boring or a little too, I don't know, a little too sciencey for them, but I want to know the truth, and I don't like the way that they hide the truth in some of these scientific journals. It's just kind of, it's like a whole nother language that's being spoken that the common man, the layman, doesn't understand. It's just like when you go in a courtroom and then, you're paying a lawyer to go in there and speak the language of law because you don't speak that language. It's the same thing. A scientist or a doctor, you go to a doctor because a doctor speaks medical. That's a different language. It's like a whole nother language. So this whole COVID-19 hoopla requires someone to understand at least a little bit about medical science to get why this is a fraud and why it is a scam and how it's actually being perpetrated on humanity. I mean, I don't know exactly how this is going to play out, but in the end, I really, really, really hope that Bill Gates is being tried for crimes against humanity for some of the things that that's being perpetrated with his money. You know, you can hide behind all the different foundations and different organizations that you give all these grants and stuff like that too, but in the end, man, you can't run from karma. This shit's gonna come back and bite you dead in the ass for what you're doing, and you know you're dead wrong. Because first of all, a virus is not alive. It can't be transmitted from coughing on somebody, from touching somebody. That's not how a virus is transmitted at all. People who believe that are people who have not educated themselves on the science of virus and bacteria and fungi, the differences in these types of things and how they can infect the human body. You have to inject a virus into someone's body. There's not a lot of ways to get it. You know, one of the ways that you get it is through a vaccine or through a shot. Now, if you don't know that that's true, go and do some research. Go talk to a doctor about it. Go talk to a doctor who has studied, you know, viruses. Go look online and find one of these people who spent 20, 30 years studying viruses and hear what they have to say about the COVID virus. First of all, there's so many different coronaviruses. It's just like the common cold. It's just like a flu. And I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find someone who has not built up an antibody or an immunity to some form of a coronavirus, so that if you were to take, have your blood tested for antibodies, for, you know, corona antibodies, most of us are going to have some corona antibodies in our body for some coronavirus. Maybe not COVID-19, but they don't care. They're still attributing, you know, if they see that corona virus antibody in your body, they're telling people that they're positive for COVID-19. Hospitals are empty, people. No more empty, no more packed than they were last year this time. I mean, that Dr. Fareed, whatever his name is on CNN, has even come out on Fox News, on CNN, and said on live TV that, I'm sorry, you guys, our projections were wrong. We got the numbers wrong. This is not going to be anything near what we projected it to be. The numbers are going to be more closer to the last flu season. So all of the hoopla that is still going on regarding this whole mess, with people walking around in fear for their lives with masks on, scared shitless out of their minds, this has to stop, people. And the only reason that it's still going on right now is because people are not informed. And people are not informed because of all of the fake news and because of people's inability to be able to tell the difference between real news and fake news these days. And not only that, people are not listening to critical thinkers. People are listening to fear mongerers. And that fear is gonna do nothing but lower your immune system and make you more susceptible to actually contracting something for real anyway, you know? But the bottom line I'm trying to get at here is there is no fear in me whatsoever with regard to catching anything that I feel like I can't get over, like the common flu. And that's the bottom line to what's happening right now in the world. But, you know, everybody has to do what they feel is best for their own bodies and their own world and their own children and families and all that. So, I mean, I'm saying be as safe as you feel like you need to be, but I wouldn't be worried about catching anything that's gonna kill you as far as a virus is concerned. That being said, 5G towers are being burned down in the United Kingdom and other places. People are harassing workers that are laying 5G cable and trying to stop them from laying 5G cable and rolling it out in their neighborhoods and in their towns and communities. I would Google why this is happening if you don't already know why this is happening. But let's just say that ever since I came across a whistleblower from the Navy intelligence whistleblower came out a few years back, and he gave a nice long lecture on video about the microwave weaponry that the Navy and the other branches of the military have and actually use against crowds of people. They can shoot a micro. He said that there were a group of nuns that were protesting in Italy, in Rome, and during the protest, they shot these microwave weapons. They directed microwaves at this crowd of protesting nuns, and it causes you to be confused and be in disarray. And they can break up crowds of protesters by aiming microwaves at you. Now, this is, pretty verifiable with just a little bit of research by just going and typing in microwave weapons in Google, and you'll see what our military is capable of. And that's not, any indication of what military weaponry they've given to the police forces around the world or in the United States. But I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if they have that kind of stuff, to break up crowds, to stop protesters, to do whatever they need to do. But I'm just saying this to say that if microwaves can be a weapon, then how close to weaponry is 5G technology, which many people have claimed, scientists, different doctors, government people. There's a lot of different people that have come out with some substantiated and some unsubstantiated claims that 5G technology is harmful to human beings, and with various reasonings. And so the biggest thing for me about that, I can't say that this is true or that's true or substantiate this or that, but the biggest thing that I can say that is an absolute matter of fact, actual factual fact with regard to 5G technology is, and that our government admits, and the FCC admits, and the CDC admits, and everybody admits this, so you can go Google this and find out that this is true. 5G technology has not been tested one iota. Not one iota of testing, of safety testing has been done on 5G technology to see what the effects, or even the long-term effects or short-term effects or any effects on the human body or the human psyche. None of this testing has been done. Now, if I came out with a new technology tomorrow that no one's ever heard about, no one's ever used before, even a new medicine, when Big Pharma comes out with a new medicine, 9 times out of 10, you have to take that medicine through trials and safety tests and safety trials. And if you don't, then the the FDA won't approve that for sale to the public. Now, 5G technology was not tested by any regulatory agency. It was not tested by the government, by the military. It was not tested by the telecom companies. The telecom companies are in a congressional hearing admitting to congressmen. A congressman kept asking them about it. And they admitted, no, nobody, not military, not telecom, nobody has done any testing whatsoever with 5G technology on human beings. So I'm not saying that any claims about what harm can be done from 5G has been officially substantiated, because I don't have that in hand to show you. What I do know, though, is that no testing has been done at all. So for them to roll out a worldwide death grid, if you will, some people like to call it, for them to roll out this worldwide grid of 5G technology, which is going to require millions of antenna, that Tesla just got the go-ahead, this contract to lay all these antennas out all over the world that work with his 5G satellites, so to speak. I think that for them to roll that out without any testing to find out what this is going to do to humans, to animal, plant life, to the planet, we don't even know. They don't even know. This is the kind of shit, you guys, that Atlantis, this is the kind of shit that brought the civilization of Atlantis to a halt. Fucking with technology that was, life-altering, world-altering technology, and not really knowing what they were doing. They were playing God, and they're playing God now with this. So, not to sound like some kook conspiracy theorist tinfoil hatter, and I'm not trying to sit here and tell you that this is what 5G is going to do to you. I don't know. I've seen so many different reports about what could possibly happen and this and that. So I can't say that I honestly know. But like I said, the one thing that I do know, this is an absolute fact. You can take it to the bank, write a check on this shit. They've not studied 5G and its effects on human psyche or physicality. They don't know what this is going to do to your body when it's rolled out in your neighborhood, in your town, in your city, in your state, in your country. They don't know. Well, what they do know is that there have been municipalities that have sued to halt this. And there are other municipalities who are in litigation right now to have 5G removed from their communities. I really personally am okay with this 4G technology that I'm using to talk live with you guys right now. I mean, it seems to be working pretty fast. I don't have any hang-ups with it. Do I really need technology? Do I really need internet speeds to be so fast that there can be 1 million cameras in my city that monitor every single thing you do, like they have in China, like they have in London? Like, honestly, I'm not really interested in that, in that kind of a world. I like a world with trees and and lakes, and I'm just saying, man, we're human beings, but we're definitely smart enough to keep increasing in technology, but we're also still animals, and we're also still connected to this planet, and we're also still connected to Mother Earth. Gaia is a living being, and we are part of her. And I think that when we roll out technologies and start tinkering with shit that can affect Gaia in ways that we don't understand, and we really haven't studied and haven't done any trials on, then what I think we're doing is we're opening a can of worms. This is Pandora's box right here. And I think that the people who are protesting against this and doing everything that they can to keep 5G from rolling out, at least until it's been studied so that we know that there's no harm, I back those people. I support those people. I respect those people, give props to those people, and I hope more people join you in the fight to keep this technology from rolling out without being tested first. That is the main key. We can't say this is what it'll do because we don't know, because nobody's tested it. Would you let your kid take some new medicine that they put out tomorrow? They say, oh, well, we can stop ADHD. Take this medicine. It's not like Adderall. It's not like Ritalin. It won't even hurt your child. It'll just make them act normal, and they won't have so much energy, and they'll be able to think straight and not have, a short attention span. But just we haven't had a chance to test it yet, but this will save the world if you would just give it to your kid right now. Would you give the shit to your child? It hasn't been tested. It hasn't been tested for 20, 30 years to see, well, how's your kid gonna act when they're 30 if they start taking this now? Maybe they won't see any effects from this shit right now. Who knows? But the bottom line is, that's the same permission that the FCC and the military and the White House and the world and all these telecom companies, that's the permission that they're seeking from us right now. They're not seeking permission. They're saying, fuck you guys, we're gonna do it. They're not even getting permission to use a technology on us that nobody in the city has rolled out and will be able to escape from. They're not even asking for permission. They're forcing you to be a fucking guinea pig with 5G technology that they admitted to Congress themselves they haven't tested. Now, I don't want to be redundant and keep rolling on about the same thing, but I'm just trying to get people to understand the seriousness of what's happening here. So there is no one who can come out and say, oh, 5G made my kids sick. Or they can't come out and say, oh, well, 5G rolled out in our city, now we got all these people that are getting sick, and we think it's 5G. Yeah, we can think that, but nobody really, truly, honestly knows, because it's not been tested in any way whatsoever by anyone. What the fuck? You mean they didn't test it and they rolled it out in Wuhan and that's where this virus started? I'm not saying there's a connection, but goddamn, man, it's getting harder and harder to believe anything that the government or the mainstream media says to me. Y'all know how I get down. I have no faith in some of these people who are getting paid, a whole lot of money to lie to us, to cover up corporate bullshit. I'm done with it, but I just wanted to point you guys in the right direction of a few people who you might want to check out some of their YouTubes. If you're sitting in the house under quarantine, or if you're just trying to stay away from the public right now, and you're sitting in the house, if you get bored and you're looking to gain some information, up your consciousness level a little bit, up your understanding on some things, I just want to direct you guys to a few people that I would recommend following and listening to some of their thoughts and their critical thinking about some of the things that's going on in the world. One of these people is Max Egan. He's a guy from Australia. Real intelligent gentleman, man. I think he's got some really important things to say about the state of the world, about this COVID crisis, about a whole lot of stuff. But he's been around on the internet for a long time. He's got a huge following. A lot of people got a lot of love for the guy because he's no nonsense and he tells the truth. And I appreciate his critical thinking, and I direct you guys to him. He's on YouTube at The Crow House. THECROWHOUSE. If you go to The Crow House on YouTube, you'll find this guy. Listen to some of the things that he's got to say. I'm pretty sure you'll be fascinated with some of the conclusions that he's drawing from the data that's available from the mainstream today. Other than him, I would also recommend you guys to check out Santos Bonacci. You might have heard me mention him on the show before a few times. He talks about a lot of different things. He lectures. He's also actually from Australia. He's Australian and Italian mixed. Came up, in Italy. He speaks like, I don't know, 7, 8, 9, 10 languages. And like he speaks some of the ancient languages, so that he's been able to translate the scriptures in ways that a lot of people have been unable to do, because they don't have the etymological background. They haven't studied words and etymology the way this guy has, and they don't have his background on studying all of the ancient scriptures. He's not teaching anything new at all. What he's doing is he's giving you guys the keys from the ancient scriptures. He's only reteaching what the ancients knew. And I mean, when I say fascinating, oh my God. Santos Bonacci gives a lecture on tropical astrology. If you've never heard that term, type in tropical astrology, Santos Bonacci, on YouTube, and listen to this guy talk about what astrology is supposed to be. We are being lied to about so many things, and goddamn if these people aren't exposing some truths for us, man. And like I said, I just want to direct some of y'all to these things so that while you on lockdown, you got a little something to keep you busy and keep you informed. There's a few doctors, I can't think of their names right now, and I'm really not in front of my computer to pull up my notes and give you their names. I'm probably going to go back when I'm editing this video for the YouTube version, and I'll put a few doctors' names down on the screen so that you guys can see who I believe to be releasing factual information about virus in general, about the COVID virus and specifically, but also about the ramped up numbers that is being purported in the media. As COVID deaths go up, heart attack deaths go down, pneumonia deaths go down. All these other death rates are dramatically down, while COVID deaths are going up. So it's really kind of just I don't know, man, some shady shit going on, and I just want to put people up on it. But anyway, I just wanted to let you guys know that I love you, and I miss doing the show regularly, and I miss talking to y'all. I miss y'all joining into these conversations, man. It's kind of like therapy, just getting down once a week and having these deep conversations about all the things that affect us all the most, So I do miss y'all my people, and I hope everybody's doing okay, and I hope everybody is eating well and staying in and safe from all the garbage that's going on right now. And I just want to say I love you guys, and be safe. And I'll get at you guys Monday with the next episode of the THC show. And I think, like I said before, I'm going to start doing a Zoom call for the THC show so that everybody can join in and actually be on video, and everybody can actually talk on and be a part of the show, so this can actually be an ongoing dialogue amongst all of us. So Whoever does not have the Zoom app downloaded on your computer or phone, please download the Zoom app if you would like your voice to be heard and face to be seen on future and ongoing episodes of the THC Show, hosted by Jericho Spitz, which is me. So, download the Zoom app, have it ready this Monday. I'm going to bed a lot earlier these days because I'm getting up a lot earlier. I've got some stuff going on with my garden, and I'm getting up and doing yoga a lot earlier in the morning, and so I'm not really staying up really late these days. Trying to get in tune with the sun, do some sun gazing, and be on that kind of schedule. So I'm going to be trying to knock the show out by around 7 o'clock on Monday nights, and that'll be 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, so maybe 6 o'clock Central. So if you guys all have Zoom downloaded by about 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on Monday, I will be posting in the group an hour or so before that the code to get into the Zoom room, the room on Zoom where I'll be hosting our meeting at, and videoing the show. So I hope you guys go to Zoom, go to the Play Store or iPhone store and download the Zoom app and get ready to step into the new season of THC on a different platform, and where everybody can actually be a part of the show, because that's the way I intended for it to be when I started it. I just didn't have the right setup to do it. So we won't be doing it on Facebook Live anymore. We'll be doing it on Zoom and then posting it in the group. And I'll be also posting it on my Patreon. So if you guys want to support the show, support my movement, you can always go to patreon.com/Jericho Spitz. That's JerichoSpitz, patreon.com/Jericho Spitz, and you can become a patron and have access to all of my posts on there. A lot of my video content, music stuff, new music. All my new music is going to only be on Patreon. I'm not going to be releasing new music anywhere else online, and not on Facebook. I won't be putting out anything anywhere else except on Patreon. I'm just done with the music industry, man. I'm just going to do it myself, and, you know, I'll just do it for my movement. I don't give a fuck about everybody else. They can do it their way. I'm done with the music industry. I'm on some whole other shit now. So anyway, I hope you guys have a wonderful evening, have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe. Don't let the fear get to you. This is bullshit. It's going to be over a lot sooner than you think, because the people are waking up and we ain't going for the okie doke. So let's do the damn thing, y'all. I miss you guys. I love you. And I hope you have a wonderful night. I'm Jericho Spitz. This is the THC Show, Talking Higher Consciousness. And I am signing out. Peace.
Ladies and gentlemen, just a brief update tonight to make sure that we really appreciate the full gravity of the shutdown, the wholesale demise of modern agriculture that is happening right before our very eyes right now. I want to talk about the meat packers and the fact that onions are rotting by the millions in fields right now. And then finally, the fact that, dairies, not only are they dumping their milk, as I covered in my previous report, but there are actually co-ops that are financially incentivizing farmers to quit dairy farming. They want you out of the game. They want to shut down producers. This is where we are now. And I want to make this abundantly clear. I'm Christian, and this is the Ice Age Farmer channel. And I want to start off with a video that was posted today by Shay Myers.
Hey guys, so what you're looking at behind me are the ramifications of COVID-19. Millions upon millions upon millions of pounds. And this is one pile of many throughout this valley that has, more than 1 million pounds in it. We can't donate it. A lot of people ask me, well, why don't you donate? Why don't you go to the food banks? Well, the food banks are mostly full, number one. Number two, even if they weren't full, they don't need more onions. This isn't about not having enough food for you in the grocery store. This is about not having enough food for you in the restaurant. When you're not eating there, you don't need it there. The way I've been describing it to a lot of people that aren't as accustomed to the normal supply chain is that imagine a freeway that's connecting the farm to the city, okay? And that freeway has this massive bridge that goes over a massive river, and that bridge gets knocked out. If that bridge is knocked out, you can't rebuild immediately. Now, are there other routes to get there? Yeah, but it takes longer. And if it takes longer, that means the normal product that's in that supply chain cannot make it. And that's what we're seeing today. Normal shipments in the United States, loads of onions, normal US consumption is 350 loads a day. We saw sub 200 shipments, 200 loads per day, every single day last week. And the most recent number that I've seen is 127. 1/3 of the normal US consumption of onions is being shipped. That's the shift in the supply chain. That's why you're seeing milk being dumped, tomatoes being dumped, squash in Florida being dumped, flowers being ruined and wasted. Everything has this normal supply chain, this normal route, this normal freeway, and those bridges are out. And that is a ramification.
And so again, Shay puts it quite well as one of the largest onion growers in the nation, that the bridge is out. There's no way to get products to market. This is the same thing we've heard from the beef, from ranchers, and it's the same thing we're hearing from dairy farmers who've been asked to step down their production and to dump milk in many cases. I did talk about this in a previous video, but what I wanted to highlight today was this particular dairy co-op, Ellsworth in Wisconsin, sent out a letter indicating, like many others, that because of the drop in value in milk and the fact that restaurants and schools, cafeterias, aren't purchasing, all of those things are true. A lot of people have just been dismissing this as a temporary dislocation, a bad allocation, but it's more than that. And this letter proves that. We read down here that the board of directors has approved a program to encourage members to quit dairy farming by paying out the equity in the program. They must sell off their cows to someone outside of the co-op by April 15th. In other words, you have 1 week to exit this industry, to stop being a producer, to retire and get rid of your cows altogether. The urgency of that recommendation and the gravity of the situation is just appalling. And everyone is caught up in this whirlwind of fear and the pandemic is all that anyone is talking about in the media. And you see people are whipped into a frenzy. And so in that state, they're more likely to make poor or even irrational decisions. And to see the dairy industry shutting down like this, literally selling off their herds within a week, how quickly can they gut the food supply of a nation? Well, we're watching it in real time, and the answer is pretty damn fast in this modern era. Of course, they have ready for us cockroach milk and other dairy alternatives. We saw Starbucks blaming dairy as their carbon footprint scapegoat. It's been an all-out war on dairy farmers already to date, but now this has really escalated to literally paying them to stop producing. That's just where we are now. Now, the same situation is true, as I said, across 3 different vectors tonight. The onions, where they can't get to market, the dairy, where they're incentivizing people to quit, and then here with the meat processors shutting down. Ranchers have no place to take their beef or their pork in many cases to get it slaughtered. And we can read down here, zoom in. Most processors I work with have seen a significant increase in worker absenteeism, so they're not able to run their production lines as quickly as possible. Their boning lines, everything is shut down, slowed down minimally. Whether that's due to the actual virus, the actual sickness, or childcare issues because the schools are shut down, which I just want to point out that would be a side effect of the government totalitarian response, or even fear of contracting the disease, which I just want to point out would be a side effect of the media overhyping this disease completely, is unclear. In other words, most of what's going on now has nothing to do with people that are sick. It's because of these ridiculous shutdowns imposed by the government and the media hype that's actually causing these food shortages to materialize. That's what's making the situation go critical right now. In some cases, the decline in available workers is severe. And that caused Carrie on Twitter here to comment, why can't we take care of this? Can't we declare a national disaster and make sure that we're able to process this? Because otherwise there are a number of problems, from the fact that we're putting ranchers and farmers out of business to the, as one euphemism put it, significant animal welfare problems that are caused when you have a backup of animals that can't go to slaughter. And so but you don't maybe not have food for them, you may not have space for them. This is causing problems. It's a logjam throughout the production supply chain. And then she goes on to say, don't you realize we're in a position right now where we're going to have to start dumping beef, just like you see people dumping milk right now, if we let this monopoly continue. And that's not rhetoric, ladies and gentlemen. We saw that this was actually the case in New Zealand as well, where butchers were left off of the critical infrastructure list. They were not designated as essential, which is just ridiculous. And so as a result, they had stocked up on millions of dollars of meat and were forced to throw it away in many cases, which is just a sad use of resources. Now look at this release from Tyson, which is of course one of the largest meat production companies in the world, certainly in the United States. And their update here today says they've added precautions like taking the temperature of workers at our locations before they enter our facilities. And while that's being done with a thermometer right now, we're even adding infrared temperature scanners throughout the factory, so we can just immediately tell if someone gets a fever and send them home. Well, this is actually, I just have to point out, this is a lot like what Kudlow was saying would be true for everyone in the United States today. In this rather scary article, U.S. economy will reopen, but there are going to be big changes. Larry Kudlow, goes on, economic advisor to Trump, goes on to say, even after we return to work and school, we're probably going to have big changes. You're going to have to stay home if you have any signs of sickness, notably a temperature, and then we're going to face widespread and ongoing testing, and you will submit to routine temperature taking. Although it sounds like they'll just have infrared scanners, like the drones in China, and like the Tyson production facility. But I digress from the food production, and if I tried to cover every aspect of the totalitarian overreach, well, this video would go on far too long. So back to Tyson. Do they actually care that their business is slowing down and gradually shutting down the actual meat production? No, they do not, because for years, in fact, this begins back in 2016, they've been making strategic and significant capital investments in fake meat, in lab-grown meat, in plant-based products. As I said, this is 2016. Tyson is making investments in the fake meat space. This is 2018. They continued to make those investments and then spin up internal plant-based lines. I've talked a lot about this before. And then even just last year, they introduced a new half beef, half pea burger, as if they knew somehow that they would need to shore up this declining supply of beef with something so that they could keep burgers going into grocery shelves. In fact, they've been way ahead of this whole situation, haven't they? Somehow they knew. That's because it was planned. This was an agenda. This is a plandemic. It aligns completely with the UN IPCC's recommendations for land use and food production. And it doesn't stop at Tyson, obviously. I'm really glad to see that Bill Gates is finally getting some scrutiny in these last few days that he very well deserves. With Fauci up there dancing around, holding the country hostage, it's just a disgusting situation. And it seems completely transparent. So I'm glad that finally Gates is getting some attention properly. But we need to step back and remind ourselves that Gates is equally involved with agriculture as the health situation. So the guy is literally funding 11% of the World Health Organization's budget, and he's making equally large investments in agriculture to take over everything. Here's a piece this year called Toxic Agriculture and the Gates Foundation, talking about how the $46 billion Gates Foundation has been going around buying up every seed company that they can find. In fact, I'll just read from the article. The Gates Foundation has rapidly become the most influential actor in the world of global health. We knew that. He's basically running the World Health Organization now. And in agricultural policies. Yes, he's there too. Remember, the food chain reaction game was the other simulation, like Event 201, that talked about food shortages that would result from an outbreak like this. And here we are now, seeing it materialize. The foundation the Gates Foundation is working with agri-commodity Cargill to develop the soya value chain in southern Africa. And what that means is they'll be bringing GMO crops in there. The Gates-founded project will likely enable Cargill to capture a hitherto untapped African soya market and eventually introduce genetically modified soybeans down there as well. Finally, they will take over all food production, as has long been their goal for hundreds of years. More than 80% of Africa's seed supply comes from millions of small-scale farmers recycling and exchanging seed. It's for that reason that he started Ag One, a new effort to take over all agriculture and use genomic mapping and AI to actually scan the solution space of seed genes and come up with varieties that they own, that they take the best aspects from any seed in the world and then they patent it. But it's here's the part. Bill Gates and others have opened the door for multinational companies to come in, including the acquisition of every mentionable, sizable seed enterprise on the African continent. They are buying it all up, hoovering up everything, so that just as Tyson did, right? Tyson bought up all meat production, and now they're replacing it with fake meat. And that's exactly what's happening here. They're buying up all the seed production, and they're doing their genomic mapping, and they will replace real heirloom genetics with their transhumanist seeds. It's a crazy situation, but this is what's playing out right now. Gates Foundation, yes, is a heavy pusher of both agrochemicals and patented seeds. So this is just a continuation of the Rockefeller weaponized USDA, again, for hundreds of years. This has been it's been a part of the War Department, part of the policy that was pushing toxic agricultural practices out to the rest of the world from the US. I wanted to also point out this gated development essay on whether the Gates Foundation is a force of evil or not. And I don't think we need to really talk about that here. It's pretty clear that they're doing terrible things to the world food supply and the world's health situation. So folks, I'll leave it there because I really just wanted to highlight the fact that that it's both crops and then the meat production, beef and pork and poultry all. And then again, that the dairy is not just dumping their milk. This is not a temporary supply chain interruption. They are incentivizing people to shut down. This is a wholesale demolition, a controlled demolition of our food supply. And I hope you're taking steps today and every day to be able to produce your own food and grow a community around you that is doing the same thing and working together. Please pass on this warning. I would love for this not to be true. Every day I look for signs. Are we reading too much into this? But it just gets worse and worse. And now we see they are buying out dairy farmers, trying to get them to stop producing for good. This is like when the Port of LA suffered a 40% volume decrease on their containers, and that was a temporary interruption. But at the same time, they announced that they laid off half of the dock workers, which was a permanent situation. So while we can stay, let's hope for the best. Let's hope these things pass. But let's prepare for the worst, because we certainly see the moves that are being made are for good. They are shutting this whole system down. Thanks for watching, folks. Let's go build great things.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the David Icke Connector video cast. Unless you've been living on the moon, you would have seen over the last few days just how much we've been attacked in terms of having our content deleted. Yesterday, we've had our entire Iconic Network videos deleted off of Vimeo. So me and my dad are going to get into that and various other things today. Dad, how are you doing, mate?
Oh, I'm a bit bored, really, and nothing's happened, has it? I would also say that we are in the process of getting Iconic back up in a way that does not depend on the usual suspects. Now, you can look at what's been going on and you can see it as a negative thing. And you can see it as confirmation of the power that this cult that I've been exposing for 30 years has over the world. But there's another way of looking at it, which I would suggest is where you get the real truth. Let's just analyze the last few days. We have a Silicon Valley mafia, and we have the mainstream media in its newspaper, radio, and televisual form. We have the BBC, unfortunately, but we do. And 24/7, they are pounding out the official narrative of everything. They are pounding out the official narrative of the coronavirus outbreak and everything else. They don't include in their reporting or the debate those that are challenging the narrative in all these areas. So we have a global media from which the vast majority of people get their fake information. And yet, when one man in a one-bedroom flat on the Isle of Wight does an interview, these all-powerful people are running around with their knickers in a twist like someone's just shouted fire. And you know, when I said on the video that I did with London Real that I'm more powerful than they are and they know it, well, that is confirmation. Why are they bothering with me, one guy in a little flat on the Isle of Wight, doing one interview? Because truth has its own power, and it is far more powerful than untruth, lies, mendacity. And so they are terrified of the truth coming out, because when people see what that truth is, for them, the whole thing unravels. So what we've been seeing, and I've talked and written about this over a long period of time, what the game was. If you're going to control billions of people, you have to control their perception. From their perception comes their behavior. Now, what greater example do we have than current events? People believe what the official narrative is about this quote virus. And as a result of believing that and coming to those perceptions, their behavior is that they go and sit in their house under house arrest. That's how it works. Control perception, you control behavior. Now, how do you control perception? Where do we get perceptions from? We get them from information that we receive from all different sources. And if you only get your information from mainstream sources, you will get the mainstream perception that the mainstream wants you to have. And so the idea has been, as the years have passed, going on towards the end game, is to completely control the information that people receive, thus controlling overwhelmingly their perceptions, which leads to controlling their behavior, what they'll accept, what they won't accept, what they'll challenge, what they won't challenge. And the way to do that in totality is to get information that people receive onto the internet. Because then, through algorithmic codes, you can dictate what people see and don't see without any human input once the codes are in place. This is what's happening. This is what Google use. This is what YouTube use. It's what Facebook use. And we've only just seen the start of it. And the rest of the media, ironically, you know, I've described the print media and the televisual media and the radio media to an extent, as in relation to these current events, to not only be voting for Christmas, but to have actually and actively created it. Because the hysteria that's been generated has led to what we see now. And I'm already seeing stories of journalists being laid off because these people can't get advertising like they did before. And as these newspapers disappear, and they are disappearing at a fantastic rate around the world, so journalists won't have jobs to do. I say journalists, most of them not journalists at all for reasons I'll come to. But what happens as a result of that is more and more and more and more and more information moves on to the internet to be dominated by Google, by YouTube, to a lesser extent Vimeo, and by Facebook, etc. And so you enter more and more communication into the realm of algorithmic control. This is what the plan is. I've been writing about it for long enough, and now we're seeing it happen. But the point is that the so-called journalists in the mainstream, and I'll explain why they're not journalists in a second, are not bright enough, and certainly do not have the backbone necessary to see this and challenge it. And so that's why they are turkeys voting for Christmas and Thanksgiving, and indeed creating it. And I find it interesting too that there are certain key things that you say, and I said in that video, which sets them off. You know, the old Corporal Jones character in the Dad's Army series, where he keeps shouting, "Don't panic," while doing exactly that. Don't panic, don't panic. Well, what makes these all-powerful billionaires? Oh, we've got so much power. Oh, shut up. What makes them say, "Don't panic, don't panic," is the truth. And that's what they want to shut down, the truth. So there are certain key things that if you say them and you get that reaction, like YouTube, Vimeo deleting the video, and then Facebook, you know you have pressed the magic button. And I'm still seeing people, Gaz, in the alternative media, here and there anyway, more than here and there, who are still putting out that what we're experiencing with current events is the release of some kind of bioweapon from the lab that's been identified in Wuhan. What I find interesting is that if you say that, you're not censored, not from what I've seen. But if you say what I said on the video, and if I said it again here, then YouTube will censor it again. They may even censor this because I'm about to expose them. But as we've shown with the way that the people have passed around that video outside of these major corporations and censors, it's possible to get this information out, even without them. And of course, by censoring that video, they have just highlighted to people this guy's saying something you ought to hear. I mean, don't panic, don't panic. They, what happens when you get into that mode? You stop thinking straight, and they stop thinking straight. So suddenly, one guy in a little flat on the Isle of Wight does an interview and presses the buttons of what's actually going on. And suddenly these all-powerful people don't know which direction to run fast enough. And what happens when you panic is, A, you stop thinking straight, but also you go big time over the top. So what we had was YouTube and then Vimeo deleting the video. And then Facebook followed. But then Vimeo followed up out of nowhere yesterday and deleted the entire content of Iconic, which is a fantastic platform with multiple subjects covered. And it's just an amazing gathering of constantly increasing information, series, documentaries of all subjects. And what I want to do here, just to show you that this is actually nothing to do with, oh, we must protect the people. Oh, no, I won't say.
The other thing as well that needs mentioning in terms of that whole Iconic network is that London Real interview that they've lost their minds about. It wasn't even on there.
No,
wasn't even on there.
Because you see, this is the point, guys. I'm just going to come to this with Vimeo's reasons for doing it. We've had an email from them now. They can write. That surprised me, first of all. But anyway, what they're trying to do is silence me, not just because of this video, but because of all the other areas of this conspiracy that I expose, which all connect, hence dot connecting video casts. So you're absolutely right. That stuff is not on there, but they still deleted it. And like I say, we're in the process of sorting it. So, you know, just give us a few days and we'll be there again. But this is what Vimeo said were the reasons for just deleting an entire massive platform of videos. One, that content on Iconic encourages self-harm. Now, what do you think, guys? Have I missed something? What?
Yeah, madness.
Madness.
If anything, most of the material on there is encouraging the opposite.
Exactly. Exactly. But they don't see, these people don't deal in truth. They can't because they're lying. So you're always going to find them out lying because they don't deal in truth. Number two, that the content includes major atrocities or hoaxes. Hello? Well, if they're talking about some of the things I've said on just one program on Iconic about 9/11, I'm not saying 9/11 was a hoax. 9/11 happened. My question is, who did it? But you can't have that debate because they don't want you to know who did it. If you do want to know, there's a book called The Trigger, my last one. That'll explain who did it and why. And this is the best one, Gaza. They deleted the content of Iconic because there are videos and programs there that, this is the quote, perpetuate and question vaccine safety. Now, isn't it funny that they do this just after all this furore about what I've said about the background to current events? They're not mentioning any virus here. These are completely different, but they just want to shut me up because this is not about anything other than censoring those that challenge the official narrative with the truth, which if people saw it, they would realize in large numbers that it is the truth, as they have with this video. And they stop buying the lies as they did before. So it perpetuates and questions vaccine safety. So does Robert Kennedy Jr. in the United States, who came out this week and condemned Bill Gates, who's driving this vaccine, condemned him for vaccination programs that left people paralyzed and sterilized. That's a member of the Kennedy family. And we have a situation whereby in the 1980s, the drug companies, Big Pharma, were getting so many lawsuits about damage by vaccines that the Big Pharma cult-controlled Capitol Hill passed laws giving exemption from prosecution to the drug companies for the effects of their vaccines, after which, of course, there was an explosion of new vaccines, because they can't lose now. But perpetuate and question, or you mustn't question. Vimeo doesn't want you to question. YouTube doesn't want you to question, because you might find the answers they don't want you to find.
Well, that's the joke. The joke as well is billions are paid out.
Yeah, just let me finish this one point, Gaz. They created a vaccine court in America, funded by taxpayers, not the drug companies. And since they started that, with an incredibly high bar to prove your case, it's so far paid out $4.2 billion in vaccine injury compensation, destroying lives, ending lives sometimes. So here you have a court, Gaza, that is paying out those sums of money with the incredibly high bar to prove it. And yet Vimeo is saying that they've taken down the content of Iconic because it questions vaccine safety. Now, I'm going to come as we go along into how all this fits together, because all these companies are controlled by the same people ultimately. Sorry, guys, you were saying just now.
You said exactly what I was about to say.
Right.
Which was the fact that because now you can't sue the pharmaceutical companies, what you can do, like you said with the vaccine courts, is sue the American government. But then the American government pays out billions, which is taxpayers' money. So the people are paying for Big Pharma to damage, maim, kill people.
Yeah. Now, when you look, Gaz, at that situation with the 4.2 billion, and I can't keep emphasizing enough that the height of the bar, how many other people who don't get compensation have been damaged. The very fact that you are moving towards, as they are in many American states, they're already there, mandatory vaccinations. What that means, that's fascism, by the way. If you can't decide what goes in your own body, that's fascism. I mean, that's mess about. But looking at the figures of damage, it means that mandatory vaccination imposed by the state is quite clearly, from the statistics alone, going to condemn a certain group of people, kids mostly, to vaccine damage, who might have been people whose parents says, no, we're not going to have the vaccination. So that's guaranteed that some people by state imposition, some kids by state imposition, are going to be damaged by vaccines who wouldn't otherwise. And if people, oh, take that video down. If people only just look at the facts, the basic facts, I mean, half a brain cell is all you need, you'll realize that that statement is quite obviously true.
That's the thing about vaccines that I find very strange, is that you're not allowed two sides. So for me, if I'm a parent, I'm looking at it, I want to go, right, what I want to hear from is I want to hear from the people that are saying vaccines work, and I want to hear from the people that are saying vaccines damage.
Yeah.
And then I will make my mind up based on those two sets of information. Whereas you're not allowed. It's that, and that has to go. And in terms of it being about safety, I was just thinking of an example off the top of my head. Like, if you'd have made a video, if there was a video on Iconic that was saying these seat belts, these, you know, life belts you get in cars, these aren't safe and these are doing this damage, they're breaking shoulders and collarbones and doing this, they wouldn't have been deleted.
No, but what it tells you something, Gaz. You see, it's this very simple thing. You find this with all tyrannies, and we are living in a tyranny, quite obviously. We've been living in a tyranny all along, but it's been a hidden tyranny. Now it's come out on public display with all these lockdowns. Anyway, what it tells you is this, that all tyrannies, and we go back to what I said earlier about controlling information, all tyrannies, when they can't win a debate, and they know they can't, on information, then they ban the debate. You know, it's quite simple. If they thought that vaccine safety, and also if they thought that they could challenge what I'm saying about current events, then they wouldn't have a problem with the other side being put. Because they'd say, oh, we'll make mincemeat of him, we'll make mincemeat of them, because we've got all these facts and information to prove them wrong. But they know they can't prove me wrong. And that's why the video was taken down by all these powerful people. And that's why they're stopping debate on vaccines, on the whole transgender explosion, on climate change. Another hoax, by the way. Can I say that, YouTube? Is that all right, having another opinion on climate change? What do you think, Susan Wachowski? Eh? So they shut the debate down. And that's what all this censorship is all about, shutting the debate down. Now, what you have is not only these Silicon Valley giants doing this, you have the mainstream media who suffer from an extraordinary level of self-deceit because they think they're journalists, who are cheering them on to censor information that challenges the official narrative. The BBC and all these people this week have been cheering on the fact that that video was censored, and that the government regulator of broadcasting called Ofcom, censor, that's all they are, headed by a woman called Melanie Dawes. And this is the same Ofcom, by the way, that promotes 5G and is very much involved in the rolling out of 5G, that wants to stop anyone saying anything about it in the context of what I did in the video. And before I just come to the BBC article and one or two others, just to, you know, show my case, there are no journalists, by my definition of journalists, in the mainstream. There are people, a rare and genuine group that are trying to be journalists, but the system won't let them. And there's the vast majority who aren't journalists at all. I'm going to come to one in a minute, the BBC. And what do I mean by that? See, there are no journalists at the BBC. There's none. There's repeaters of the official narrative. That's what they are. The BBC is not a news organization or a journalistic organization. There are no journalists there. It is a government department. What they call journalists at the BBC are basically civil servants. They don't realize that. They think they're journalists. Self-deceit is amazing, but they're not. And I'll tell you why. Let me give you my definition of a journalist. And it's not really my definition. It's any sensible definition. A journalist takes a situation and takes the official narrative that's coming out from authority. And a proper journalist then looks at what is being said and investigates it to see if it stands up. Not with an agenda, not with a preconceived idea, just dispassionately checks the facts and whether it's true. A proper journalist looks at the contradictions and the things that don't make sense, and they investigate them. And when they've gathered their findings together, they communicate those findings to the public on the basis of what they have genuinely found and what the evidence genuinely says. Now, that's what a journalist does. And because of that, there are no journalists at the BBC or in the mainstream media. Like I say, there are some who are genuinely trying to be, and it must be a nightmare for them. But most of them are not journalists at all, because what happens in mainstream journalism, absolutely what happens at the BBC, is you have parameters. You have parameters that you have to operate within. And so there are vast areas of happening, society, possibility of explanations of all kinds that you can't go there. You have to operate within these parameters. In terms of the BBC, it's we must perpetuate and repeat the official narrative, and at the same time, this is how the BBC maintains its unbelievable bias, is it makes sure that people challenging that narrative don't get on its airways, and if they do, they get attacked in very short time. So there is no journalism there, because the journalists at the BBC and in the mainstream in general are not looking dispassionately at the evidence and investigating, see if it stands up, and then communicating what they found. They're within this parameter. So if a BBC journalist started questioning the official story of current events, they'd be out on their ear so fast, their feet wouldn't hit the ground. Same with all these so-called journalists in the mainstream. And so not only are they simply purveyors of the official story without any questioning, they are also gatekeepers who seek to discredit and silence, in the case of the BBC this week, those that are proper journalists and are challenging what they won't challenge, either because they're so clueless they don't realize there's anything to challenge. Oh, this is what's going on. How do you know? The government said. Or they simply haven't got the backbone and the round ones to say what they believe is going on. One of the things that happens in mainstream journalism, places like the BBC, is your backbone has to be proven to have turned to jelly before you can possibly get a job as a journalist at the BBC. When I was there a long time ago, there was still a massively controlled organization, but there was still some proper journalism went on, especially under the last director general of the BBC, who was there when I was there, called Alistair Milne. He was the last guy who really stood up for any kind of proper journalism, and Thatcher got rid of him. And ever since, there have been grey faces and grey suits in positions of power, overwhelmingly at the BBC, culminating with a guy who's been the director general in this whole phase, called Lord Hall. He was head of news when I was at the BBC, and if I said that Lord Hall was weak as water, I may be libeling water and subject to a lawsuit. So this is what you have. The BBC is a government department, and so we come to the reporting of this video being deleted by YouTube. It's now flying around the world, passed on by the people. And it's written by a BBC, I almost said journalist there, cool, wash my mouth out, called Leo Kellyan. And Leo Kellyan makes statements that are completely unsupportable because he's clueless. He don't know anything. He's never done research outside of the tram lines in his life, I doubt. But anyway, Leo Kellyan. He also has a Twitter account, and I was staggered to see how tiny the numbers are. This guy's posting to himself on Twitter, but he works for the BBC. So he says in this article, YouTube tightens rules after David Icke 5G interview. He says, during the interview, Mr. Icke falsely claimed there is a link between 5G and this health crisis. How do you know that, Mr. Kellyan? How much research have you done into that question, that area? Zero. What you've done is let the official story tell you that they're false. And this is the sinister bit. YouTube only deleted the content after the session had ended, because it was obviously live to start with, despite being aware of the broadcast while it was ongoing, says Kellyan. This is the sinister bit. It changed its rules after the BBC questioned why the video was permitted. So, ladies and gentlemen of Britain, you are paying through the license fee, mandatory license fee, for a BBC that's not only there to give you the official story of everything, but is almost patting itself on the back that outside of anything to do with the BBC, it is helping to silence people putting another story. This is the BBC which you are being forced to pay for. Maybe people might contemplate reconsidering paying for your own censorship. So this article by Kellyan goes on to say that it changed its rules after the BBC questioned why the video was permitted. But I want to quote you what YouTube said to this bloke. We have clear policies that prohibit videos promoting medically unsubstantiated methods to prevent the coronavirus in place of seeking medical treatment, and we quickly remove videos violating these policies when flagged to us. What the hell has that got to do with what I said in the video? And by the way, these Silicon Valley censors were targeting people saying that high doses of vitamin C were good for the immune system, at the same time that New York hospitals were giving patients high doses of vitamin C because it was effective. It goes on. Now any content that disputes the existence or transmission of COVID-19, take that on board, ladies and gentlemen. Any information that in any way questions the official story of this situation we're facing will not be allowed to have their voice heard. That happens only in fascist communist regimes. Don't let them kid you that we live in a free world. We don't, clearly. there's more. Now, any content that disputes the existence or transmission of COVID-19, as described by the World Health Organization and local health authorities, brackets same thing, is in violation of YouTube policies. This is Susan Wojcicki, the CEO of YouTube, which is owned by Google. Got to come to that. And who is the second biggest funder of the World Health Organization, second only to the United States government? Bill Gates. Who is driving the policy worldwide about the virus? The World Health Organization and Bill Gates. Who is funding virtually all the so-called research into a vaccine for this virus? Bill Gates. So we have a situation, Bill Gates, Microsoft, Silicon Valley, who stepped down from his work with Microsoft just before this started out. That's just another coincidence, nothing to worry about. He funds, basically runs, because of that, the World Health Organization. And YouTube is saying that anyone that says anything that's different to the World Health Organization narrative has to be censored. In other words, Bill Gates' narrative now. 6 weeks before this kicked off in China, there was a thing called Event 201, which was the simulation of a coronavirus pandemic involving the Gates Foundation, the World Economic Forum, the 1% fest at Davos every year, and others that have been involved since it kicked off in China. And if you watch the videos of this simulation, they are saying that what we have to do in this pandemic is to censor people who are questioning the official narrative. And for reasons I'm going to come to, YouTube is always going to do that. So this is what we're looking at. And then Facebook, after the video on Facebook got 1 million views, they pulled it. Because they don't care about you. They don't care about your right to hear all sides and then make your own mind up. They are there to indoctrinate your perception, to dictate your behavior. That's what it's all about. And so we have this report by ITV. Facebook removes, that's it, so-called independent, it's not. Independent television news, it's called. A bit of a joke in the title alone for people around the world, that's what it is. Facebook removes David Icke coronavirus 5G conspiracy video. And it says here, echoing the BBC, shortly after ITV News contacted Facebook, the video was removed for breaking misinformation rules. Well, on that case, ITV and the BBC would never appear on bleeding Facebook, would they? But here we have again. It happened after we contacted them. These are supposedly journalists. You know what real journalists stand for? And without it, they're not real journalists, because these people aren't either. It's the free flow of information and the right to the free flow of investigation and the end of censorship that allows truth to be pursued without limit. So all these newspapers and these characters at the BBC and ITV, if they were real journalists, would be kicking off like crazy over this. And they'd be saying, look, you may not agree with him, we may not agree with him, but what is it saying if you're censoring someone for having a different view of a situation that's fundamentally changing human society? That's what journalists do, and that's why these people aren't journalists. Or one reason, there's lots. So not only are they not kicking off to protect the free flow of information and opinion, they are helping and cheering when it's censored. Turkeys voting for and creating Christmas. And then there was the Sun newspaper, a lady called Charlotte Edwards, also covered the story. And she says here, Ike also used the platform to make the false claim that a coronavirus vaccine will include nanotechnology microchips. Ms. Edwards, how do you know it's false? I have been investigating what I've been putting out full time for 30 years. I have spoken to insiders, I've spoken to whistleblowers, and I've traveled to 60 odd countries in pursuit of the truth. You, Ms. Edwards, will not have spent 30 frickin' seconds investigating whether nano microchips, all told to me in the what was being done in the 90s by CIA scientists. You won't have spent 30 frickin' seconds investigating that. But, oh no, it's false. How do you know it's false, Miss Edwards? Well, the authorities said. Thank you. You're not a journalist, are you? But this is a let me just pick that up. Actually, there's another one here. Second, yeah. There was a comment, two comments. That's why I've just picked that one up. There's two comments at the bottom of this Sun article by a lady called Anna Richter, and she says, 5G could be incredibly destructive to the human body. We need real studies proving this is safe. Otherwise, big business and the governments they put in place to rule over us are playing with our lives. Thank you, Mr. Ike, for informing the masses. And she goes on, also, Sun, thank you for publishing this article and giving Mr. Ike so much free press. You have turned him into a sensation now, and tens of thousands of people who would never have heard of this interview will now watch it. So that's what happens, you see. When you panic, don't panic. That's what happens. You stop thinking straight. And more people now are aware of my information, which I compiled in the books and everything over 30 years, than ever would have been if they'd have just let it run on YouTube. Because they may think they're powerful, but when you break it down, they're actually not very bright. And it says something that people that are not very bright can have so much control over people worldwide. And they do that simply by putting the target population in a smaller box than they're in. And we can break out of that anytime we like.
I've had so many messages over the last couple of days from people that I've known for years through football or ice hockey or music or whatever that aren't into any information at all, saying, what's this? Can you send me a link? Can you send me a link? And it's all just because of the kickoff from the BBC and others. So you're right, they are, you know, letting it or making it expand. The other thing I will say about these articles, obviously, which I've read, is they're massively misleading in terms of what people are saying.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't mention, as we have and many others the whole time, that the whole thing is multifaceted. It's not a case of 5G, bang, that's it.
Yeah, exactly. It's one aspect.
It's one aspect of it. And so what they use, and I've seen it a lot, is well, that country's got coronavirus cases and doesn't have 5G. And often, actually, they're mentioning countries that do have it. So they're saying there's no 5G in Australia, there's none in Japan, well, there is. But because they never mention the fact that because 5G is just an aspect of it, we're not saying that it's 5G. We're saying it's an aspect, it's a part of it. There's lots of other bits.
One quick thing about Japan, by the way, Gaz, is that Japan is next to China and has not had a state of emergency. So obviously the coronavirus arrived by snail into Japan. But this week, the Prime Minister of Japan announced a state of emergency. 2 weeks earlier, they turned on 5G in Japan. But you can't make these points because the mafia that control Silicon Valley doesn't want people to consider even the possibility. And that's the point, you know. I mentioned earlier that they want to move information out of what we've perceived as the mainstream media up to this point and onto the internet and the Silicon Valley platforms, because then they can censor by algorithm. And so we have Google, which is controlled, run, owned by Sergey Brin and Larry Page. We have YouTube, owned by Google, that is run by Susan Wojcicki, who is the sister of Anne Wojcicki, who runs 23andMe, the DNA operation. And Anne Wojcicki was married to Sergey Brin at Google. In fact, Susan Wojcicki was involved in the whole emergence of Google, according to the reports that I've seen. Then you have Facebook, that is run by Mark Zuckerberg and the chief operating officer, Sheryl Sandberg. And then you have Vimeo, which is, of course, behaved absolutely disgracefully, to complete insult to freedom and fairness this week, which is effectively owned by a guy called Barry Diller. So those people, particularly the first ones I mentioned, have extraordinary power now over what globally the population see and hear. And as the mainstream media loses more and more ground, that control of what you see and hear is going to increase and increase and increase. There is something that connects Sergey Brin, Larry Page, Susan Wojcicki, Mark Zuckerberg, Sheryl Sandberg, and Barry Diller. With all that global power over what you see and hear, all of them come from 0.2% of the global population. Anyone think what the statistical chances of that may be? And anyone think in the mainstream media, it might just be worth saying, well, why did this come about? And when I say 0.2%, I'm actually talking about far less than 0.2%. Because 0.2% is the Jewish population of the world. But I'm not talking about Jewish people and the Jewish community. Friends of mine in Israel have been sending me reports of the lockdown by the government of Israel on the people of Israel. And it is as, if not more, draconian than anywhere else in the world. You see, we're not talking about Jewish people or Arabic people or American people. We're talking about an elite that has contempt for all people. People talk about, Israel, that's the Jewish people. Well, hold on a minute. Why is the government of Israel treating the Jewish and other Israeli people in this lockdown with such utter draconian contempt? In the same way that's happening in other countries, because we're not talking about this race, this group, or that group. We're talking about an elite that dictates to all groups. And what we need to do is put down these fault lines of race and religion and belief and realize that we're all, whether Jewish, whether Arab, whether whatever, we're all in the gun sights of the same elite. So why is it not questioned why a fraction of 0.2% of the world population has control of all these areas of Silicon Valley that are increasingly dictating everything you see and hear, and present company not accepted, censoring everybody that's putting out a narrative that they don't want you to see. That's what this is about. Brin and Page, Wachowski at YouTube, Zuckerberg, Sandberg, they don't give a shit about your freedom. They just serve their masters. And what if the same force ultimately, it is controlling all of them? This is what's going on. And this is why they're trying to shut me up, not just over this virus thing, but in other areas too, hence Vimeo, Barry Diller, trying to shut down all the other information. It's because after 30 years of investigating this full time, they know I'm telling the truth about who really controls the world. And truth to them is like garlic to a vampire.
The big point for me, and I say it to a lot of people that aren't even into a lot of the investigative stuff. So I say, right, forget 5G, forget vaccines, forget this, forget that, forget all of it. Explain to me why, and it's so blatantly obvious, they are cooking the books and making coronavirus figures higher than they truly are. I mean, I'm getting messages from people whose family members have died and have been labeled with coronavirus on their death certificate, and they're kicking off because they didn't die of coronavirus. So if you've got a global pandemic which is threatening all of us, why do you need to make the figures higher than they really are? Just that simple question. Why do you need to do that?
Exactly, massively higher than they are. I mean, what's starting to happen now, slowly but surely, is physicians and people in the medical profession starting to seep out and point out this thing that's going on, where whatever you seem to die of, you are said to have died of COVID-19. And I saw some very interesting figures this week of deaths from all causes compared with last year. And as the death figures for COVID-19 have gone up in their figures, so the number of people dying from other causes has gone down compared with other years. So anyone see a connection there? What do you think? Oh, sorry, YouTube, too much truth. Susan Wachowski's shouting panic. So yeah, that's a great and obvious question, and the answer is pretty bloody obvious as well.
It is. I had a conversation with a guy the other day, and I was saying that if they want to make a vaccine for coronavirus, then it would cure other diseases. So just give it to everyone to cure every other disease, because apparently you can only die of coronavirus now. You can't die of cancer anymore.
No.
Now, if you stay in your house and you don't go out and you just watch telly, that cures cancer now. So that's a result.
Yeah, well, two things to that. First of all, there was there's a video on davidicke.com at the moment, and it's a physician in America, a lady, who's explaining how the death certificates have been manipulated to have coronavirus on them all over the place, and this is now coming out in more and more countries through the medical profession, who people just see what's going on and are absolutely freaking sick of it. But the other side of it is that, deaths are going to go up compared with what they would have done, which will, again, give them more chance to put coronavirus on the death certificate because of the lockdown. You've got old people shut away with no exercise. How many old people are shut away on their own? Late in life.
Yeah.
Their husband's gone or their wife's gone. And one thing that will happen in the fear that's been generated is that some of these people are losing the will to live. And when you lose the will to live, it is fatal if it's deep enough. Then you've got people not getting the vitamins they get from the sun, vitamin D, etc., because they're not going out enough. And then you've got all the stress and fear, the stress alone of being locked away. I mean, you imagine, Gaz, some of the places around the world that people live in, terrible conditions, but now they have to stay there. And so you're going to have an increase in people who are dying. You're going to have an increase in suicides because it's driving people crazy. So these will then end up on the figures for COVID-19. This is it's unbelievable. We had this situation this week with Eddie Large, the once well-known British comedian, who went into hospital with heart disease. Apparently he's had a bad heart for a while, and he goes in with heart failure. And what they're doing when you get into hospital, they're testing you for COVID-19, which they're not testing you for COVID-19, testing you for a genetic material, which many people have in their body. It's nothing to do with a virus. And so because they've got it in their body, when they do the test, they test positive, and they say it's testing positive for COVID-19. It's testing positive for a genetic material. Explain all this in that video that's banned by YouTube. So he goes in, like all people are going in to hospital for various things, and they're testing them for COVID-19. And when they die of what they were dying of, they then say they die of COVID-19. This is how it's working. And there's another thing that's very, very important when we're looking at the number of people who are dying, and that is how many people are dying and have been condemned to death by the fact that hospitals, in the midst of this hysteria, because people are going around all the time showing hospitals being empty. Well, why are they empty? A, because the pandemic war zone is not there in all these hospitals that they're claiming, and people have shown that on their phone cameras when they've been around them in different parts of the world. But also they're empty because they've stopped other operations, and they've stopped other consultations, including cancer consultations. So this lockdown, through delayed operations, delayed consultations and diagnoses, will have condemned to death a large number of people on that basis alone. And, I don't keep repeating that this cult I've been exposed to for 30 years are super psychopaths just because it's a phrase. I say it because they're super psychopaths. And therefore, if you look at the character traits of psychopaths, there's something called the hair test, named after the bloke that came up with this. And he listed a series of character traits. And if you have enough of them, you are officially designated a psychopath. And right at the top of that list is lack of empathy, no empathy, deletion of empathy. And empathy, I've long called empathy the fail-safe mechanism of human behavior. Because if you have empathy, in other words, you can put yourself in the feelings of others resulting from your actions, then that's a fail-safe mechanism, because you're getting an emotional consequence through empathy for how you're affecting someone else. When you have no empathy because you're a psychopath, that's what these people are. The psychopath doesn't even cut it. We need a new word for an extreme psychopath to even get close to these people. When you don't have empathy, you have no emotional consequence, no matter how you make people suffer. In fact, these people get off on people suffering for reasons I explain in the books. So this is what we're dealing with. They couldn't care less about old people. They want rid of them. That's why it's coming out more and more and more and more through medical professionals and through loved ones and families that old people are being pressured to sign do not resuscitate forms. Even people in orthopedic wards. It's a scam. The whole thing's a scam. If you don't like that YouTube, well, you can stick it up your ass, frankly. I don't mind.
How many people is that going to kill? Having a do not resuscitate form. And like you say,
yeah. And you know what's going to go on the death certificate? COVID-19. And he's still got people in the alternative media saying, oh no, it's a bioweapon from the Wuhan lab. Oh, bollocks. Where are all the people dying from the bioweapon? Ooh, I hadn't thought of that. And there's one other thing I want to mention this week, Gaz. Just knocking this on. This is the way I'm seeing it. There will come a point sometime in the later summer when they'll start to roll back these lockdown impositions. Some of them, not all of them or anything like, but they'll start rolling back. And there'll be a period when you'll have a little bit of a respite. And then when this vaccine arrives, which I have said from the start existed before the thing happened, and now they're winding people up with all this research funded by Gates. Oh, we're looking for a vaccine. Just before this vaccine comes online, you're going to see another wave of the virus. And because of the precedent set by what's happened now, there won't be a gradual incremental movement to total lockdown, because this incremental movement is only incremental to where they planned to get all along. It's not happening by stages. Oh no, we're not doing enough. It's only just getting people what I call the totalitarian tiptoe towards where they wanted to go anyway. But because this precedent's been set, what they'll do is go straight into lockdown, and they may even come up with something. I won't mention the means by which they could do it, because that's banned now, apparently. And there'll be more hysteria just as the vaccine's coming out, because they want to make this vaccine mandatory. And if not forced upon you, then if you want to come out of lockdown, you have to have the vaccine or you can't, basically. And who has said that? Bill Gates. Bill Gates has said, you can see the clip on davidike.com, that the world cannot go back to normal. It never will, until we have a vaccine that we've gotten out to virtually the entire world. This is where it's leading. And if people have the vaccine, then they should certainly get fully paid up membership for life for Naivety Anonymous. Because what's happening here is so blatant, and it's so blatant that that's why the psychopaths of Silicon Valley want to silence me. Oh, one other thing before I go, in terms of dropping this forward, projecting this forward, they want to, what they are in the process of, getting control of food. Not only do they want to control people through this whole lockdown situation, they want to control food and who has it and who doesn't. And what's going to happen as a result of this lockdown is that food production in the world is going to fall because they want it to fall. And then there is a plan, ultimately, that food, even food that we eat now, will no longer be the food that we eat. And it will go to some kind of synthetic situation. Not tomorrow, but that's the plan eventually. And so there's a plan to create artificially a food shortage. And you want to eat? Best do what you're told then.
It is fair to say things won't go back to truly normal until we have a vaccine that we've gotten out to basically the entire world. And so, you know, the best people at the foundation who are all about high volume vaccines, you know, are working with many manufacturers